The period following the events of the American Civil War was marred with a mix of progress and complete and utter lawlessness. These were the times of outlaws, settlements, and hard living. The Osage Trail, a major route used for travel, saw plenty of traffic from travelers and settlers, usually aiming to go westward. Nearby sat the town of Cherryvale in Labette County. And in 1871, just down the road, sat an unassuming little homestead on a plot of land, a place where one could resupply on provisions or sit down for a meal. It was the first stop on the way to Cherryvale and your last stop out. Some didn't leave the house entirely. Enter the Bender family, a family of four who constructed a remote cabin just outside of Cherryvale in 1871. It served as an all-purpose pit stop for travelers braving the Osage Trail, doubling as not just an inn but also as a general store and restaurant. The Benders registered 160 acres of land adjacent to the Osage Trail, which served as a vital pathway to those headed west. The family consisted of John Bender Sr., his wife, Elvira, or Elmira, their son, John Jr., and daughter, Kate. Not much in the way of detail is known about their origins, but it's been determined that the Benders immigrated to the United States from Germany sometime in the mid-19th century. Elvira, or Ma Bender, is the heart of the family, presenting herself as a warm and welcoming figure with a gentle smile and a knack for home-cooked meals. She draws in travelers with comforting hospitality. John Bender Sr., or Pa, was the patriarch of the family. Believed to be somewhere around 60 years old, Pa Bender is a stoic and imposing presence, a man of few words but immense strength. His rough hands tell tales of hard work, but they also hint at a more violent side. He stands as the enforcer of the family with an intimidating silence that speaks volumes. The eldest son, John Bender, is a charming and clever young man. He possesses a magnetic personality, noted for his wit and disarming demeanor. Kate Bender is the alluring daughter, known for her captivating beauty and playful demeanor. She has the ability to enchant those she encounters, often using her charm to draw in unsuspecting men. Kate was more or less the face of the family. A beautiful young woman in her early 20s, Kate was the only member of the family who spoke fluent English with no accent. She was a spiritualist, a self-proclaimed medium, often conducting seances to speak to the dead. For a year and a half, the Bender family home and inn offered a variety of services that even the lowliest of travelers would find appealing. Home meals, beds, and groceries, all served with a smile by this lovely family from far away, who, besides Pa, seems to be pleasant company. It's important to remember the southeastern Kansas landscape was as harsh and unforgiving as the rest of the other untamed parts of the country. There was little in the name of protection beyond a sidearm. The threat of bandits and killers on the road were a fact of life. The elements were deadly if not properly prepared, and disease ran rampant. In short, people going missing on the old frontier was just how it was. But when a high volume of individuals disappears on the Osage Trail in a short span of time, it does raise eyebrows when one of the only local inns was seemingly the last place many were seen. The Osage Mission Trail was one taken by people for many different reasons, a popular one being the hope of a new life out west, very likely packing up their old lives and starting anew elsewhere for better opportunities. But what exactly could a place like the Bender home have to do with these missing people? Who's to say they didn't perish in the wilderness long after they had stopped for food? It was the last place travelers would stop before stopping again elsewhere. Much could go on in this lawless land, but there was no way to track the real-time movements of others during this period. Regardless, the Bender family home did raise suspicions in the area, but there was hardly a theory about why exactly that was. Until someone came looking. In March of 1873, the brother of Kansas Senator Alexander York, William York, went missing in the area, becoming the latest individual to seemingly vanish out of nowhere. Ironically, he was on the hunt for his friend, George Lonker, who had gone missing months prior with his daughter, Mary Ann, who was only 18 months old. At this point, the convenient proximity to the Bender family residence was becoming disturbingly apparent, drawing in suspicious glares from the community. On April 4th, Alexander York would lead a search party in hopes of finding his brother, making sure to check with the Bender family. He kept his personal theories about the family to himself, but he interviewed them about serving William, but he was told they only served him briefly before leaving. He found the family oddly hostile about the inquiry and coming off as somewhat strange. Kate Bender even offered her services as a medium to help Alexander find William. In late May of 1873, something mysterious happened. A passerby noticed something odd about the Bender residence. It was strangely quiet, devoid of any activity or signs of life, literally. One of the earliest observations made was the condition of the Bender family cattle. They lay in the pasture, either dead, dying, or starving, a clear sign of neglect by the owners. When Alexander York and the searchers scoured the land for clues, the obvious signs of rectangular depressions in the earth rang off alarm bells. "Boys," York yelled, "I see graves." That's when the digging began, and the horrible truth was unveiled. In several areas around the property, a series of bodies were found in different states of decay. Some corpses showing signs of violent attacks, some with stab wounds and evidence of bludgeoning. These were not quick deaths. Alexander had finally gotten his confirmation. His brother, William York, was found buried on the property. George Lonker, the man he was looking for in the first place, he and his 18-month-old daughter, Mary Ann, were found buried together. It was concluded that the Bender family would strategically murder these victims in a very simple but effective manner. When a potential mark would stop by from a long day on the road, they were offered temporary refuge from the dangerous elements outside in the cabin, just beyond the curtains. It was an enticing offer, one that more than enough had taken, and after accepting, there wasn't much more to it. Likely from the moment they entered the rear of the residence, one of them, presumably John, hit the victim with a blunt object, such as a hammer, rendering them unconscious when they weren't looking. Step 2 was where the trap door came into play. The freshly battered victim falls through the door and down into the cellar, where another member would grab them and slit their throats to confirm the kill. Then, their bodies were robbed of any valuables and left there until nightfall. Then, under the shroud of darkness, the body, likely lying there for several hours, is taken from the cellar, moved to the land, and buried. Many theorized that the Bloody Benders weren't a family at all, but instead just another group of cutthroats who found a more lucrative way to murder and rob, with the added benefit of living normal lives. Some say that Elvira was Kate's biological mother, but the relation to the rest of the group remains ambiguous. John and Kate may have married under common law instead of brother and sister. Ma and Pa may also have never been actually married either, instead just having a complex relationship with one another. Point being, no one actually knows who these people really are. As to what became of the perpetrators, well, that's also what adds mystery to this already macabre string of events. On whatever day the Benders decided to suddenly leave the area was perhaps the last day they were ever seen, if by anyone at all. When word was spread about this odd detail, local residents decided to investigate the property even further. That's when the unthinkable would begin to unfold. Upon searching the likely eerily quiet Bender home, the discovery of something unmistakable emanated further inward. This rank, foul odor led the townsfolk behind the curtain and into the root cellar trapdoor, of which the contents inside were fit for a nightmare. Described as a, quote, blood-soaked cellar, it was apparent that the grisly scene wasn't the place of death for not a few, but at least between 8 to 14 murder victims. The underground space was spattered with blood, littered with human remains. It was determined this place is where the trail ends for the missing travelers. There was no more doubt. This was confirmed even further, for when the property was excavated, the remains of other victims were recovered, totaling 11 people. More found in the orchard and surrounding areas, another in the well. A $2,000 reward was placed on the family, about $50,000 today, sparking a desperate and frantic search for the family of perpetrators. Everyone from law enforcement and community posses scoured the region, praying they weren't too late. Others made sure to check every last nook and cranny of the homestead for any clues or signs of more bodies. This would go on for several weeks, but by mid-June 1873, the brunt of the search ultimately came to an end, after it became apparent that there was little to no evidence of the family, nor where they've gone. Oddly enough, there were apparent sightings of the family after they had left the property. Eyewitnesses reported that the Benders had been seen leaving by train separately, parents John and Elvira intending to flee to Missouri, while Kate and John Jr. went to Texas, another reporting they had seen Kate and John in the Texas town of Denison. Story would have it that both parties would reunite in Red River Station, where all four would continue their journey deeper into Indian territory and away from the clutches of the law. This story would come from numerous locals in the area, claiming they had settled down, seeing them regularly. In the following weeks, 12 men, including Addison Roach and his son-in-law, William Buxton, would be arrested as accessories to the murders. Part of a local vigilante community, they were implicated in disposing some of the Bender victims' stolen valuables. However, many of these accusations were simply based on circumstantial evidence. But when it came to the family themselves, clues regarding their whereabouts were next to none. The public was rabid, desperately hoping for a breakthrough. On that note, you will find no shortage of morbid curiosity gone too far in a period such as the late 1800s. Seemingly from the moment word had gotten out about the Bender family's crimes, waves of curious sightseers flocked to the cabin in order to see the very location these heinous crimes took place. The volume of demand became so high that even special trains carried those wishing to catch a glimpse. The most astounding detail about these tours, according to historian Susan Yonasis, was the series of visitors that let themselves into the cabin to rip the place apart for souvenirs, while authorities were still unearthing the property. Later, on October 22, 1889, 2 women were arrested in Niles, Michigan for larceny. Elmira Monroe and Sarah Eliza Davis were charged with stealing pewter plates, a frying pan, and a pair of infant stockings. Oddly enough, they were rearrested over suspicions that they might be members of the Bender family, not seen in close to 20 years at this point. These strange accusations were corroborated by Frances E. McCann, the daughter of one of the family's victims, who claims she had dreams about her father's brutal murder, and falsely identified the 2 women as being members of the Benders. This sudden turn of events transformed an otherwise mild conviction into a nationwide spectacle. Far and wide, Sarah and Elmira were suddenly subject to a buzz trial that presented the possibility of finding some semblance of justice for the victims of the Bender House of Horrors. Although Frances said she identified one of the women as Elvira Bender, she was certain that the other was not Kate. This only cast doubt on these accusations, including a further series of inconsistencies with the women. Details including solid alibis that placed one of them in Michigan during the time of the murders certainly strengthened their case. They were taken back to Kansas, where their identities were confirmed. These were no Benders. Rumors surrounding the fate of the family are sparse and have no confirmation. Some believe that they were killed by bounty hunters or vigilantes as they fled, or that wherever they settled, locals discovered their identities and descended upon them as a form of street justice. Reported sightings of the Bender family were far and wide as well, apparently being seen as far as the Midwest. Today, the property that once belonged to the infamous family has moved on from its gory past, with the original cabin being demolished, but still attracting visitors who are curious about its dark past. Archaeological studies have been conducted by students at the University of Kansas, excavating the land in hopes of finding more clues relating to the case. So, what happened? Did the Benders really commit these crimes unpunished, leaving Kansas behind in a sort of morbid ride into the sunset? Where did they go? And do you think they ever face justice?